India, a country known for its curry, spirituality, and in modern times for its IT. While the historical influence of this land has been lost over the centuries, there still are remnants that stand even the test of time. One of them is language. Today, Hindi, the language most spoken in the northern part of India, is widely spoken in the neighboring nations of Pakistan, Bangladesh, and Afghanistan, whereas Tamil, the South Indian language, is the official language of countries like Sri Lanka and Singapore. A survey conducted in June 21 in United States found out that amongst the top growing languages in year school, Telugu ranks the first with 86% growth. Looking at the country itself, India is a home to over 121 registered languages and over 270 mother tongues. And to top it all, India also ranks second when it comes to the number of English speakers in a country, right below the US. So the question begs, do all Indians talk to each other in English? Well, the answer is of course no. But yes, and like everything beautiful in India, it's complicated. So what does it all have to do with Angkor Wat and the trader from India who became the first king of Cambodia and went on to establish one of the most prosperous South Asian empires of all time? You're watching Cinematic Learning India, and let's get right into it. Contrary to popular belief, most Indian languages in India are derived from a single script called Brahmi script. So, it's not uncommon to find similar words in the language of Sanskrit and the other South Indian languages. In fact, Indian history is filled with descriptions of debates between sages and scholars from both the regions, which tells us the ease of communication between the regions. The Brahmi script later got divided into modern day Devanagari, which is the mother script for Sanskrit, and Tamili or Tamizi, which is the mother script for Tamil and other South Indian languages. So it's not wrong to say that it all comes from a single root. As for English, though it can be said that the common oppression suffered by entire subcontinent brought the wide adaptation of the language, the answer lies much deeper and way back in time. It's a well-known fact that Buddhism started in India and flourished throughout the world, but the influence of India and its culture and language even predates the time of Buddha. While it's impossible to cover all of it in one video, I would like to introduce you to a man whose story explains just how far-reaching the influence at that time was. Back in around 1 CE, a local Brahmin trader from Kalinga Empire, now modern-day Orissa, got his ship wrecked because of pirates and crashed on the beach of modern-day Cambodia, where sources differ how, but he got a marriage proposal from the first monarch of Cambodia, Queen Soma, and together they founded the Khmer Empire, which lasted till 15th century. Not surprisingly, if you look at the names of the Khmer kings and emperors, these are all Indian names, and it was one of them, Jayavarma II, who in 802 AD founded the city of Angkor, which served as the capital of Khmer Empire till its last days in 1431. Not just that, Sanskrit was also the official court language of the Khmer Empire. Sadly, today only a few Cambodians can read the language after all intellectuals were killed during the brutal genocide of 1970s by the group called Khmer Rouge. The Khmer Empire stretched all the way from Vietnam to Myanmar, explaining the still prominent Indo-South Asian culture in that region. In Thailand, even the word Fasha comes from the Hindi word Bhasha, which means language. In fact, Thailand, amongst all South Asian countries, is the one where the past Indic culture is not just present but thriving. Thailand's new airport is called the Swarnabhumi Airport, which means the golden land in Sanskrit. Many other words like Sukh, which means peace, comes from the Hindi word Sukh. The word Rath, which means a vehicle, comes from the Hindi word Rath. Even the word for science, Sat, comes from the Sanskrit word Shastra, and the word for college, Mahavidyalaya, comes from the Sanskrit word Mahavidyalaya. In Japan, the exchange was not just limited to language, but to even deeper ideas. The word monk, which comes from Japan, actually derives its origin from the Sanskrit word muni. So it's not common to see even similarities between gods. As you can see, on the left is the Hindu god Vishnu, and on the right is his Japanese counterpart Narayan X. Similarly, as you can see, on the left hand side is Lord Brahma, and on the right hand side is his Japanese counterpart Bon X. And similarly, we can see many examples of how we can see a blend of traditional Indian folklores taking their own Japanese identity. In China, although the records differ, there were similar stories of monks who established different school of thoughts. One of them was Bodhidharma, who established Zen Buddhism. During many political changes in China, most of the linguistic influences is now gone, but it still thrives in South Korea, where the similarities go so deep that it's even hard to differentiate between South Korean language and Southern Indian languages. The word Amma in both South Korea and South India means mother. The word Nan in South India or Na in South Korea both means I. The word for father in both South Korea and South India, which is Appa. Similarly, Onu for one and Pulu for grass. And these are just the tip of the iceberg. Traveling to the west, though it's not as prominent as it's in the east, but the impact can still be traced. On November 2018, the British Council celebrated 70 years in India and listed 70 words in the English language that originally come from India. If you want to know more about it, I've put the link in the description. Many English words such as avatar, bandana, bangle, belpuri, blighty, kaliko, kashmir, nirvana, planquin, jute, karma, swami, tank, tiffin, thug, and mantra, and many more. And through English, their influence was further spread into other European languages. In Germany, the word Das Bandhan comes from the Sanskrit word Bandhan. Das Banglo comes from the English word Bungalow, which is derived from Hindi word Bangla. Their Dash Jungle comes from the Hindi word jungle. Their Guru, which means guide, comes from the Sanskrit word Guru. Their shampoo comes from the Sanskrit word champu, and many more are actually derived from different Indian languages. The Spanish word for chess, ajedrez, actually comes from the Sanskrit word shatranj. The word sandalo actually comes from the Sanskrit word chandan, which means sandal. The word nirvana actually comes from the Sanskrit word nirvana, which means to achieve the highest state of being. The word chador, which means blanket, actually comes from the Sanskrit word chadar. Similarly, in France, the word bishop comes from the word bishnoi, which actually meant in ancient times the priest class. The word kauri comes from Hindi word kauri, which means a little, and konkani comes from the Marathi word Kodkadi, and Nilagot comes from the Hindi word Nilgai, and similar traces can also be found in Italy. So, were the British Indianizing the entire Europe? As I said in the beginning of this video, the answer lies much deeper and way back in time. Sanskrit is also related to Greek and Latin, with similarities in phonetics, grammar, and script. This can be shown with some of the Greek god names and their Sanskrit translations. Athena comes from Sanskrit Ahana, which means light of the daybreak. Pater comes from Pitri, which means father. Tres comes from the Sanskrit word Trayas, which means three. Devyas, which in Sanskrit is called Devas, means God. Not just the gods, but many of the commonly used words in the language also share similarities. The Latin word door comes from Sanskrit dwar. Primitive comes from Sanskrit word prachin, which means historical. Man comes from the Sanskrit word manu, which means a male human. And serpent comes from the Sanskrit word sarpa, which means snake. So how did this happen? How can the influence from a single country be so prominent even without leaving a trace of war or bloodshed? If you liked the video, please hit the like button. If you'd like to see more such videos, please hit the subscribe button and hit the notification icon. And if you learned a new word, do tell us in the comment section. Till then, cheers guys. Have a good one.